This is the F-117 Nighthawk, the F designation. It means fighter, but it had no cannons. It was slow, slower than a commercial airliner. It couldn't maneuver. If an enemy saw it, it would be shot down instantly. So why did the United States build a fighter that couldn't fight? Because it had a weapon nobody else had. A dark secret. It was invisible. This is the story of the most revolutionary weapon of the Cold War. The plane that changed warfare forever. Operating from the shadows. If this paradox has already captured you, if you want to know how the impossible was done, subscribe and turn on notifications. The real story is stranger than fiction. Our story begins in darkness. The height of the Cold War. The world was divided by an iron curtain, and that curtain was guarded. Not by men, but by radio waves. Radar. The all-seeing eye. For the American military, it was a nightmare. The Soviet Union had created the densest air defense network in history. An impenetrable shield. SAM missiles. Anti-aircraft batteries. Interceptor jets. All linked by radar. They could see everything. The mighty B-52, the agile F-16. Even the untouchable SR-71 Blackbird could be tracked, even if they couldn't shoot it down. Any plane sent into enemy territory. It was a suicide mission. The generals in the Pentagon had an unsolvable problem. How do you attack an enemy that can see your every move before you even make it? The answer wasn't to build a faster plane. The SR-71 was already the limit. It wasn't to build a plane that flew higher. The U-2 proved that wasn't safe. The answer was to build something that broke the rules. Something physics said was impossible. They needed to build a ghost. The order went to the place that officially didn't exist. The same place that created the Blackbird. The Skunk Works, a secret facility in Burbank, California, led by brilliant minds. They weren't normal engineers. They were outcasts, wizards. They thrived on the impossible. The mission was simple to say, but insane to execute. Build a plane that radar cannot see. The problem is, everything is visible to radar. A radar works like a flashlight in the dark. It sends out a pulse of energy. That pulse hits the plane and bounces back to the receiver. The echo draws the plane on the map. To be invisible, you can't have an echo. How do you make a 20-ton metal object simply disappear? That's when a young mathematician at Skunk Works found a paper. A forgotten Soviet scientific paper, written by Pyotr Ufimtsev. The paper wasn't about airplanes. It was about pure mathematics. It described how to calculate the radar signature of simple two-dimensional shapes. Triangles, squares. The Pentagon saw the paper and dismissed it as useless. The Skunk Works saw it and understood. What if instead of smooth curves, a plane was made only of flat surfaces? A plane made of triangles. The idea was radical. Instead of absorbing the radar, they would reflect it, but not back to the receiver. They would scatter it. Like a disco ball shatters light. The flat surfaces would send the radar pulses far away, in thousands of different directions. The echo that returned to the enemy would be tiny, the size of a bird, or an insect, too small to be seen, too small to be a threat. It was genius. But there was one fatal problem. A plane made of triangles cannot fly. Aerodynamics demand curves, smooth wings to generate lift. A plane made of flat panels and sharp angles is aerodynamically unstable. It's a brick with wings. The Skunk Works engineers were at an impasse. They could build an invisible plane that couldn't fly, or a plane that flew but was seen and shot down. They couldn't have both. It was the ultimate engineering dilemma.
What would you do? Would you choose invisibility or the ability to fly? Their answer changed engineering forever. Leave your theory in the comments. They were betting everything on something that didn't fully exist yet. Computational power. The answer came from the fly-by-wire system. For the first time, computers were fast enough. A human pilot could not control that brick. They would crash in seconds. But a computer could make thousands of micro-adjustments per second. The pilot would say, "Turn left." The computer would translate that, moving the control surfaces frantically, keeping the plane in the air by computational brute force. The pilot wasn't flying the plane. He was suggesting a direction to the computer, and the computer was keeping disaster at bay. The project was called Have Blue. The prototype looked like an alien ship, a broken diamond. They tested it at Area 51, in the middle of the desert, far from prying eyes. The first flight was terrifying, but it flew, and then they tested it against radar, and it disappeared. The radar operator saw the chase plane, but Have Blue was a blur, a nothing. The ghost was real. The F-117 Nighthawk was born. The F designation for fighter was a lie, a deliberate cover. To hide its real purpose, it wasn't a fighter, it was a bomber, a surgical scalpel, designed for a single mission, to enter enemy territory completely alone, no escort, flying in the dark of night, open the bomb bay doors, drop 2 laser-guided bombs with pinpoint accuracy, and return home before the enemy even knew who hit them. For years it operated in absolute secrecy. The pilots were called the Night Bandits. They lived outside the system. They flew only at night. Their existence was a myth. Until 1989, the invasion of Panama. The F-117s flew for the first time in combat. They hit their targets with terrifying precision. But the real test. The real terror came in 1991, Operation Desert Storm, Iraq. Saddam Hussein had the same Soviet shield, the same impenetrable radar network. Baghdad was one of the most defended cities on the planet. On the first night of the war, the world watched live. The first bombs didn't come from missiles. They came from nowhere. As reporters broadcast, the skies over Baghdad lit up. Command and control buildings, communications bunkers exploding one by one. There were no sirens, there were no planes on the radar. The Iraqi air defense was firing into the dark, shooting at ghosts. The F-117s were there, invisible, untouchable. They flew over the presidential palace. They dismantled the brain of the defense in less than 15 minutes. The impenetrable shield crumbled. The F-117 opened the door, and the rest of the Air Force came right behind it. The Nighthawk flew nearly 1,300 missions. It hit 1,600 high-value targets, without suffering a single loss. It was the most dominant weapon performance in modern warfare history. It was a perfect statistic, a weapon so effective it seemed unfair. The F-117 was not a combat plane, it was a god of war, a ghost that delivered judgment and vanished into the night. The Pentagon believed its secret was safe for decades. They were wrong. March 27, 1999, the Kosovo War. An F-117 was on a routine mission. But the Serbians were smart. They studied the ghost. They knew it wasn't completely invisible, just very hard to see. They modified their old Soviet radars. Using low frequencies, they waited, and for a fraction of a second. When the F-117 opened its bomb bay, the angle changed, the echo appeared. A SAM missile was fired, the impossible happened. The ghost was shot down. The pilot ejected and was rescued, but the secret was out. The world now knew that the invisible could be seen, and if it could be seen, it could be killed. The F-117 was quietly retired in 2008, replaced by a new generation, the F-22 Raptor, the B-2 Spirit, planes that combined invisibility with the speed and agility the Nighthawk never had. Today, the F-117 is a relic, a museum artifact, that ugly shape, those strange angles. They look primitive now, but that is the mark of true revolution. The F-117 wasn't built to be beautiful. It wasn't built to be fast. It was built to do one thing: prove that the impossible was a lie. It was the fighter that couldn't fight, because it never had to. It made the fight unfair. It changed the rules of the game before the opponent even knew the game had begun. If this story about radical engineering made you think, subscribe and turn on notifications. The history of Skunk Works is full of secrets, and check out this next video about the plane that flew faster than missiles.